What's up, y'all? Alvin here, and today we're talking numbers. All right, so pretty much every piece of fly fishing equipment is going to have some type of number attached to it. And a lot of them are pretty obvious, but not all of them. So I thought today we would kind of break it down and make sure everybody knows what these numbers are supposed to mean. All right, so rod, reel, line, leader, tippet, and flies all have numbers. Like I said, some of them are pretty obvious. You know, we start with the reel. A lot of times the reels will actually have the line sizes that are recommended for that reel in the name or the model number of the reel. Sometimes the reels will just have a number like, 1, 2, or 3, but usually there's some type of chart on the website or the catalog that will actually explain like, a number 2 is for line sizes 5 and 6, number 3 is for 7 and 8. That's usually fairly easy to figure out. The other thing is most of the reels will have more than one size for that reel. So they'll work with a 5 or a 6 or 7 or an 8, so that way they don't have to make a bunch of different reels, and really usually the reel is going to be good for 1, 2, or even 3 different line sizes, just depending on what you're trying to do with it. So reels, pretty obvious. The next thing is your rods, and the rods will have a series of numbers and sometimes letters on them, and that can get a little bit confusing. Most of the time with those numbers on the rod, you're going to see the length of the rod, how many pieces there are of the rod, the line size the rod is designed for, and occasionally there'll be some numbers that relate to these, how stiff the rod is, the action of the rod. The things that you're mostly concerned with are line size, then probably the length, and then the number of pieces of the rod. So say you're looking for a 9-foot 5-weight 4-piece rod, super common rod. That's probably the number one trout rod out there. Most of the rods are going to have something on there. It's probably going to say 590-4, which means 5-weight, 9-foot 0 inches 4-piece rod. Pretty simple. If you look at the numbers on the rods, you'll usually find that somewhere, and that's really going to give you most of the information you need to know. So pretty simple, pretty easy to understand. And same thing with your lines. The line, the box will usually say something about the line, what weight it is, and then it will go to what taper it is, and then whether it's a floating or a sinking or a sink tip or an intermediate. But usually the most important things you're looking for are the weight, number one, and then number 2, whether it's sinking or floating. And then you get all kinds of other variations after that, whether it's a freshwater line, saltwater line, this and that. If you get the weight that is recommended for your rod and floating or sinking, you're probably going to be good. Like I said, there's tons of other variables that will come into play, but usually that's a good starting point. All right, moving on to leaders. Now your leaders, you will see usually some type of designation on the leaders. They're typically going to tell you the length of the leader, 7-foot leader, 9-foot leader, 10-foot leader, 12-foot leader. And then the X size is going to tell you the diameter of the tippet of the leader. That is the thinnest part of the leader. So 9-foot 4X. That is going to say this is a 9-foot leader and the tippet is 4X diameter. That's a really popular leader for trout fishing. Now, what does that X mean? So the X diameters is one of the things that's sort of confusing about these numbers in fly fishing. So the larger that X number is, the thinner your leader is going to be. So your leader and your tippet. So a 4X is going to be a lot smaller than a 0X. it's sort of like wire sizes. So the higher that number, the smaller the diameter. So when you're looking for leaders, if you're going to be trout fishing, you're probably looking at 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6X leaders, and they get even smaller. On the other end, if you're going saltwater fishing, you're probably looking for a 1X or a 0X leader. And they actually even make sizes that are larger than 0X. So it'll be a 0.1X or 0.2X, and that's going to make the diameter be even larger. And that will sort of relate to the pound test. Typically, when we're trout fishing, we don't really think about the pound test so much. It's more the diameter, the X size. Saltwater and bass fishing, a lot of times you will actually see the pound test of the leader on there as well. And the tippet, the diameter may be not as important. Usually, just think about what length leader you need and what size flies you're going to throw, and that's going to help you determine that X size of the leader. Tippet, same thing. So you're going to buy a tippet, it's going to be in a spool, and you're going to look mostly at that X size. So the tippets are going to be the same as the X sizes that are on the leaders, 0X down to 6X, 7X, 8X. And you'll just buy those depending on the size of the flies you're throwing and also the leaders that you're working with. One thing to think about is if you buy, say, 3X leaders, you can usually go up one size and maybe down 2 sizes and still get a good knot. So if you buy a 3X leader for trout fishing, that should cover you for throwing, big hoppers and stuff. But then with that same leader, you can use smaller diameter tippets, so with a 3X leader, you can use 3X, 4X, or 5X tippet and still get a pretty good knot. So you don't have to buy a bunch of different leaders. Confused? Don't worry, this information is out there everywhere, and your friendly neighborhood fly shop can definitely help you decipher a lot of this stuff. All right, so moving on to hook sizes. The hook sizes are sort of like the leader sizes or the tippet sizes. The larger the number, the smaller the hook. So say a number 1 hook is going to be much larger than a size 18 hook. So size 18, size 20, those are tiny little trout flies. And then number 1s, number 2s, those are going to be more like your saltwater flies or your bass bugs. The thing is there's even larger sizes. So, maybe if you're going offshore fishing, you may be using a 4/0, well, that's a 4 with a 0 after it, hook, 5/0, 6/0, even 7/0 hooks. So hook sizes are sort of like tippet sizes. The larger the number, the smaller the hook. Kind of like wire sizes once again. Kind of confusing, especially if you go from manufacturer to manufacturer, because sometimes the hook size will not be consistent. So you get a 2/0 hook from this company and then a number 2 from this company, and they're pretty much the same size. Same thing even sometimes within the same manufacturer. Say a bass bug hook, like a number 1 bass bug hook, is probably going to be larger than a number 1 trout hook. A number 1 is a really big trout fly. But the thing is you just kind of have to take these numbers as a guideline and don't get too caught up in the numbers. It can get really confusing, but really at the end of the day, it can be as simple as you want it to be. So I hope that helped. If you have any questions, suggestions, or comments, just throw them down there. I'll try to answer as many of them as I can. Thanks for watching the video. As always, if you like it, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I appreciate it. Hopefully, I will see you in the next one. And in the meantime, good luck on the water.